All right, welcome to Standing Point, Stories from Americans Afield. Today we have Mike Catfish Flautt, the owner of Tallahatchie Hunts, a good friend and mentor of mine. I have him to thank for my shooting prowess in basketball and high school ball. And just really excited to talk to you today and talk to you about Tallahatchie Hunts and your time growing up hunting and fishing around the Mississippi Delta.
Yeah, I guess I used to hunt with a lot of older guys, when I started out. And then I guess I am the old guy now.
Oh.
I used to put out decoys for a lot of the people that come hunting and get to go with them. I was fortunate enough to have a bunch of older guys that would take me. I'll tell you some stories on some of them after a while.
So how did do you remember your first duck hunt, or did you just kind of grow up in a duck blind? How did you get started in all that?
Well, we grew up in the country. We were out at Swan Lake, and there were 9 of us, like 8 boys and 1 girl. I was number 3, and of course, Dad didn't ever hunt that much. He was always working on stuff. He was on the Soil Conservation Board, and I can remember one of the first things he ever did. We were small, and the dam on Casty Bow blew out, and all the water went out of Casty Bow into the Tallahatchie River. And so he got with old man Guy Phillips there, and they brought in some bulldozers and trackhoes. I don't know if we had trackhoes back in, but bulldozers and different things, and they built a new dam across the end of Casty Bow. Kind of moved it up from where the old dam was, where it runs into the river. And they built a flat out there on both sides to get the dirt out of it. And then that flat was just big and open. And I can remember going in there when I was a little bitty boy, and we'd plant millet out there. Mm-hmm. I always liked Japanese millet because it would grow it would grow in more soil.
Right.
It didn't really, water didn't mess with it. If water got over it, it'd kill it. And then when the winter would get there, we'd have, of course, we're right there just below where Tallahatchie County is like a big bowl. You've got mm-hmm. 3 rivers that run together that drain Sardis, Enid, and Arca Butler, and they all run together right there just north of our farm and right above the mouth, 5 or 6 miles above the mouth of Casty Bow. So, the reservoirs would fill up, and the Corps normally wouldn't let the water out until after Thanksgiving, so we always had floodwater. We always had ducks in there. But I guess the first time kind of hunting we ever did was, we didn't know anything about baiting duck holes or decoys. We'd go roost shooting, and then Dad got us a motorboat one time. We'd go jump shooting. Yeah. So, yeah, that was the only. That was fun. Now you hunt roost shooting and jump shooting. You stay out there and we watching the fire come out the end of the barrel and the splash in the water, and you'd go out there and start looking for the ducks. Cause sometimes we had waders, sometimes
right.
we didn't. And then we got a boat, and we always wanted a boat with a bigger motor and a faster boat. And we had Casty Bow right there, and I was going down through there one time with my cousin, and we rounded a curve right down just below where I live now. And dadgum, if we didn't meet the game warden.
Oh, man.
He met us right there, and we had a boatload of ducks. And he was jump shooting, too. Anyway, we
messed his hunt up.
We kept on going and got on the other side of the bow, and he kept on going past. He said, y'all be careful, don't drown now. That sure is fun now. I remember years later, I had this little girl from New Orleans up there. She grew up in Charleston, and we probably weren't supposed to do this, but she couldn't shoot. She never shot a gun. Her daddy had a newspaper in Charleston when she was growing up. And I said, we're going to get you a duck. We're going jump shooting in Swan Lake. And so I had a boat with a 25 horsepower motor on it and a swivel seat in the front of it. So she sat up in that swivel seat, and we were flying down through that lake. My nephew Duval was driving the boat, and I was sitting in the back seat with him, and she couldn't hit anything. And finally, I told Duval, I said, when she starts shooting on this next duck, you shoot the same time she does and tell her a good shot. So he did. We had this big old greenhead came up, and he flew straight up and just about out of range, and she shot and tipped a wing, and the lake was on flood stage, you know. It falls down, and duck swims down 40 feet of water and drowns and comes floating up to the top, and she got that duck, and she's so happy. And we got back to the bank, and she said, "This is so much fun." I said, "It's not illegal, is it?" And I said, "Only if you get caught."
Yeah. Only for game warden season.
So anyway, we started, I remember one of the first places that we got in, Dad took us down to the old PD Woods, where Fighting Bow is now.
Mm-hmm.
There used to be a guy named Henry Reynolds. He was a outdoor writer for the Commercial Appeal. And this guy, P.L. Blake, whose P.L. was legendary, you know. His daddy was a trapper in Phillip. And then P.L. was a big politician. He played football at West Tallahatchie. And then he went to Mississippi State and played. And then he went up in Canadian Football League and played. And he came back, and he was big into politics. He's in a lot of the books that you read about Mississippi. But yeah, he had that place, had a big blind out there. He invited us to come down one time. And I remember a big greenhead coming down through the woods. This is where Fighting Bow now is. Yeah, I shot that big greenhead. That was fun. We used to walk up the railroad track, and we had a real narrow place in a pasture where the wood ducks would come to roost. Mm-hmm. And we had an old Sears and Roebuck 410 pump. So we would take turns shooting the ducks. They would just steady coming to roost. But we didn't have any waders, so we had to shoot them, and they had to fall on the ground because if they fell out in the water, we couldn't get them. Daddy, I remember one Christmas
that takes a lot of skill, doesn't it?
Huh?
That takes a lot of skill to shoot a passing duck and have it land on the railroad.
Well, they're coming right at us. They're eyeball high. We're shooting, you know. They're just right there. They weren't very high, and they were flying. You know, they were coming on into land. We were far enough off the water with. We hit them. They fell before they got in the water, and then we had to go pick them up. But we'd go back to the house and we pluck them off. We killed them. We had to eat them, so we'd pluck them all, take newspapers or paper sacks and singe them, and then we cut all the liver and gizzards. And you ever clean the gizzards? You know, you cut that gizzard open and get that grit out of it and take that old hard skin out. You get the gizzards, heart, and livers, and Mama make gravy out of that, and rice and gravy. And we ate everything. We ate everything we killed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he bought us all 12-gauge shotguns one year, 870 Remington pumps for Christmas. So I mean, 6 boys, 8 boys, or whatever. So 5 or 6 of us were old enough to hunt. So he bought 4, 5, 6 shotguns there, and he couldn't afford the shells, so he bought us a darn shell reloader. Well, back then you had 12-gauge shells that had paper. You had the brass, and then the where it's plastic now with paper. Mm. So we were saving all our shells and reloading them, and we'd get out there and we're hunting because if we had waders, they leaked, and then we'd always wade over them. So we have our shells in our waders, and they'd fill them up with water, and shells get wet, and ducks would come in, you'd shoot, boom. But if a shell was wet, it'd go poof like that, and you'd shuck another shell up in there and shoot, and then blow your barrel up. We blew up every barrel we had on all those things. So Daddy, he gave up on hunting then. So I remember my uncle had a flying service. He started right after World War II. And there was an old ag pilot that grew up in South Louisiana that had, Mr. Ernst, Carl Ernst was his name. And Miss Charlene was his wife, red-headed girl, taught in the 2nd grade. And then he had 3 daughters, Joyce, Anita, and Carlene. But didn't have any boys. So, you know, we were always out there. He loved to duck hunt. And so we would go down there, and I don't know if you've ever seen the Avery finisher blinds and stuff, but Carl pretty much invented the concept of the Avery finisher blinds. He invented these what we call mummy boats. Mm-hmm. And first ones that we made at the hangar at the airport down there were made out of plywood. But boy, they were just so heavy you couldn't pick them up. And then he mailed a styrofoam mold, and we started pouring fiberglass in there and making. And he got a patent on that, and I still got one there in my yard. But that's what we would hunt out of. And Carl he wasn't a duck hunter; he was a duck killer.
Right.
You know, and that's kind of what my reputation is. I'm not a duck hunter; I'm a duck killer because I don't shoot them anymore. I guess I've killed enough to.
Right.
I'd probably be going to jail for some of the stuff I'm telling you now. But anyway, Carl's theory on hunting ducks was don't hide anything and hide around anything higher than the highest thing in the field. So remember what I said about Tallahatchie County being a bowl area, and all of that land where Yocney River, Tallahatchie River, and Coldwater River ran together out there was lowlands. So as people came out there and farmed it, they cleared it up. So you had thousands and thousands and thousands of acres out there that was just cleared soybean fields, and it was floodland. So I mean, they would cut the soybeans and stuff, and then you'd always get it where they'd open the reservoirs and they'd catch floods. So
right.
we had lots and lots of ducks that came down there. I mean, I always called that the Brazil flyway. My dad-in-law's dad and a couple of his brothers got on trains, and they moved out came to Brazil, which is a little town kind of northeast of Webb, right there, right in the edge of the backwater area there. And they cleared land all out through there, and they owned a lot of land out there, and then ended up keeping some of it, losing a lot of it. My son still has got some land out there, but there were so many ducks out there. And I remember when I started dating the kid's mom, she had all that hunting land. I liked duck hunting stuff, and so it kind of
worked out.
Kind of was natural, Yeah. Anyway, getting back to Carl. Carl, we made those mummy boats, and Carl said, "Well, we're not. If you had one tree sticking out in the field, you could stand by that tree. If you had a wood line out there flooded out, you could stand in the wood line. But if it's a flat field out there, that's when we use the mummy boats." And he was, like I say, he was an ag pile. They had a little Cessna Cub that we would get up every day, and we would find the ducks all out through that backwater. And back then, there wasn't any posted land in Tallahatchie County, that area down there, but lots of flooded land. So we could hunt everywhere. And we would go out there. We'd find the ducks, and we wanted them to be there for 3 days. And once they were there for 3 days, he would say they're firm. So we hunt them the 4th day. And we might pick out a little knoll, and we'd see what the wind direction was. And then we'd get up about 3 o'clock in the morning to go. We'd go every day. And we'd take, most of the time we had to have one motorboat, and we'd put 2 sacks, Kroger sack fulls of decoys in there. These old rubber decoys. Each one of them held about 50 decoys. And then we'd take we'd take one boat for us, another boat for the decoys and guns, and then we'd pull 3 mummy boats behind it. Then we'd go out through there, and we'd get there, and then we would set up where the wind would be over our back, and we would turn. Everybody had to be a right-hand shooter, and we would turn facing to the right. So you're laying on your back shooting, and you'd have your decoys out here and maybe 20 yards or so. And so the ducks are going to come, land right into the wind. And you just, anyway, we'd shoot them. We'd shoot light load lead. And we had a limit. You know what our limit was?
Pretty close to you, huh?
Yeah, they were close. You would shoot them. The ducks, when they were coming down, they'd start to flap. And right when they'd flap and put their feet down, if you shot them, they had to go down before they could come back up. So that's when we would shoot them. And we didn't miss a whole lot. But you know what our limit was, don't you? We'd get a Kroger sack full. And Kroger sack, and old people know what a Kroger sack is. People like you probably don't know, but they used to buy 50-pound bags of potatoes in Kroger sacks, burlap sacks.
Right.
But we would have those, and when we filled the Kroger sack up with ducks, that was our limit. And we'd come on out and clean the ducks and give them away or whatever to people, and then we'd get up and find another batch of ducks for the next day. And we had a little inventory where all we could hunt, and we went every day.
Yeah.
But a cul-de-sac holds about 50 mallards.
I was going to say, well, that hold, what, 30 or 40, but it holds
holds
50.
about 50 mallards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
It's not a bad day's take.
yeah. But
Were,
anyway,
were ducks back then, were they on a point system?
I don't know.
Or do you even know?
I don't know. They did have points. I can't tell you how many points.
Yeah. I can remember Daddy telling me about how they would do those points.
Yeah, I know wood ducks one time there were a lot of points on wood ducks and stuff, but that was, we didn't ever see any warden and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Daddy and a friend of his were hunting one day, and these two ducks were coming down through. They were hunting timber, and these two ducks, they had just gotten there, just gotten set up. Two ducks came in through the timber, and Daddy said, I looked up at them, and I thought, oh, they were hooded mergansers, which I think on that point system you could kill one, but then you were through hunting. You couldn't kill any other duck, and you had to go home, and to be within the law. And Daddy's friend over there thought they were wood ducks. And he said, I saw him pull up, and right when I yelled, don't shoot him, he doubled on them coming through the timber. He said, it was a beautiful shot. But I said, well, so y'all had two ducks, so y'all left. He said, son, that's not the way that works. He had two ducks.
yeah.
He said, I still had a limit of mallards to shoot.
Oh, there were times when you couldn't kill pintails, you couldn't kill canvasbacks and stuff like that. But hard to tell, when they're coming in like
right.
in the heat of battle or whatever.
In the heat of battle.
Yeah.
Well, what about never mind. Go ahead. I had a question, but I'll wait.
We were going to tell some warden stories.
Yeah.
Well, like I say, we didn't have any wardens there for a long time, and then we had my cousin Bubba Graham. Bubba loved to duck hunt, and he had two boys, and he always had friends to come in every weekend to hunt. A lot of people had that. People come from all over to hunt ducks, and but Bubba always had the places to hunt. So Chris Marley, my best friend, and I, he would let us go hunting. He always had plenty of shells. We didn't have to worry about shooting the paper shells.
Mm-hmm.
And we would take his two boys hunting somewhere, and then he could take all his guests hunting on weekends and stuff. So we always hunted. And a lot of times he'd need more help to take people, and we'd go put out decoys for him and work on ducks. But that's all Bubba ever did. I'm about to that point now. I'm the last. I'm Bubba now.
Yeah.
I can sit there and talk all day. But I've got a big line of bullshit. But anybody that hunts does. But anyway, we were clicking along there, and there weren't many local people that hunted. We got to where, people would come in from weekends and hunt, and then I remember the first time we had a warden from up in Coahoma County, red-headed guy, he was about tall as me, a little bigger, named Jim Pilgrim. Mm-hmm. He was a hell of a warden. But Jim changed the way that we hunted. He really did.
He was one of those guys. He'd been in special forces in Vietnam or something.
I don't know Jim's full story. I knew he kind of grew up over on the Mississippi River, and but he was dedicated to what he did. He was some kind of warden. I remember had one buddy who was a member of Fighting Bio, was out Christmas Day out at Brazil. And he was out there shooting away, and they got to the limit, and they kept on going, and he hollered, "Ho, ho, ho, Mr. Pilgrim, I know you at the house with, waiting on the kids and Santa Claus and all that stuff. Ho, 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 boom, 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 boom." They kept shooting. And finally, when they got through, he and his buddy went out there to pick up the ducks, and he hears something behind him. Pilgrim had a old P-roll, coon asses know what a P-roll is. Mm-hmm. That's anybody from Louisiana. But he could hear him, and you see this big red bearded head coming up through this little ditch in the field out there, and it's Pilgrim, and all of a sudden he starts singing, "Here comes Santa Claus, here comes Santa Claus." It's Christmas Day. So they get out there, and I'm not going to call the guy's name. He passed away a few years ago, but everybody knows who he is. He had real curly hair, but he did belong to Fighting Bio. And he said, "Well, I have way too many ducks, wrote him a ticket." He said, well, Jim, Merry Christmas to you. I guess we're going to head on home and celebrate Christmas. He said, y'all boys aren't going home. You got too many ducks. Y'all are going to jail. You can't take us to jail. And of course, it's a federal offense. They had to take him to Oxford and put him in jail in Oxford. Man, oh, man. I think his wife about left him, both of them, for that. Another guy who was, he bought a bunch of property north of me. We used to put out decoys for him. He was a Memphis guy. He came down, bought a lot of land, made a lot of money. And I'm not even going to tell you what he did. But he bought some property just out there in Tallahatchie County on the north side of mine. And then he owned the place I had. And I had to put out decoys for him when I was in high school and college and hunted with him some. And he loved to hunt ducks. He was just passionate about hunting ducks. But he didn't know when to stop shooting either. So when he bought that farm out there, he put armed guards and gates up on every entrance to it. And everybody knew he was shooting a hell lot of ducks in there. And like I say, he passed away a few years ago too. But Mr. Pilgrim couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
He'd been flying and looking. He knew where the ducks were. And so this man would get his guides and farm managers to go out there in the morning before we go hunting, and he knew where he was going to hunt and put all the decoys out and get the blind ready, and then they'd come back and get him, take him out there, and he'd shoot. Well, he'd shoot ducks, he'd shoot ducks, he'd ducks. Well, Pilgrim couldn't stand it. So he stops the train right there on the highway that runs through my place now, and got on the train before daylight with several other wardens and rode up in the middle of the place, got out, and they just sitting out there waiting on him. Comes out there and starts hunting and shooting and stuff. And they killed a bunch of ducks. And then they got ready to go. And one of the guys walked back there and had all the ducks piled up on the log and was saying something. Mr. Pilgrim tapped him on the shoulder. I'm not going to say what happened after that, but it kind of ended it. But you never heard the guy's name, never heard anything. But Duck Unlimited National Headquarters, one of the conservation big duck organizations, ended up moving to Memphis, Tennessee, and didn't cost them a single cent. And they started another wildlife chair at Mississippi State and stuff, all because of that. But he never made the news on it.
Yeah.
So.
Well.
Some of these stories I don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
You know? I'm so old now, it won't matter.
You got to tell them, or nobody will remember them.
Yeah. But we actually named a duck hole after Jim. Called it Pilgrim Point. My brothers were out there. I just bought the place in Dunham a year or two after I bought it, and real pretty cypress break. And matter of fact, Mike Mills took this guy out there, and it was just slap full of ducks. And then that's why he bought that place. And then he saw the ducks on the other side of the highway, so he ended up selling that place to me. And then he bought that on the other side of the highway. And so we're out there, and I wasn't with my brother. Some of my brothers and their friends were out there hunting, and then I don't think they killed but one duck. And another brother and a buddy was sitting over in a blind in the old metal hole, other side of the break, and they started shooting, and they were just shooting at blackbirds and shooting at everything. Well, anyway, so one brother comes out to go get the truck, so he gets in the truck and pulls his waders down like that. And about that time, Mr. Pilgrim steps up out of the ditch, just right there in front of him, and he looks at him. Oh shit! He said, "Get in, let's go." So he hops in the truck with him. They drive over there to my other brother, and he comes walking up, and right in his face. And he said, "Can I help you?" And he threw that badge on him right there. Well, they had one duck, you know. The other guys across the thing were just shooting away, and they ended up walking over to the sheriff's house and got away. And the sheriff called my brother's house later and said, he said, "I got these two boys hunting with y'all over here. We don't want them. Leave them over there." So we named that duck hole Pilgrim Point. And we had a guy that was one of the regional directors at Ducks Unlimited there, Delta Waterfowl. I don't think Delta Waterfowl even started then. But he was so scared he was going to lose his job. But he didn't. And then the next year, they had the national, the state duck print. It was called Mallards at Pilgrim Point. Yeah, but you know, you got to really have something happen to get a duck hole named after you.
You really do.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, we kept on hunting, and then we'd gone. You know, after the wardens came in, I mean, you couldn't get any local people to hunt. We had 3 or 4 of us that would hunt around, but we had people come in on weekends, and then that was all through the 80s. I think this was my 47th crop since I got out of school. My wife and I got married in 75, and like I started hunting back in the 60s. And then Pilgrim's thing all hit about in the mid-80s, you know, and it kind of changed everything.
Yeah, I remember Daddy telling me that when he was growing up, you know, there weren't but a half dozen people that he knew that duck hunted.
No, weren't
and then
many.
by the time he started duck hunting in the early 70s, he said there still weren't.
Yeah.
He said, you know, it was all pretty much with a rare exception. You just, wherever you could go, you know, you didn't necessarily have to ask permission, but, you know, you could. But if you were on if you were on the river, you know, you could go up and find somewhere. And every now and then you might run into somebody that didn't want you to, but it was pretty wide open.
But I remember I was cotton farming for a long time. Hadn't had any cotton in 22 years now.
Mm-hmm.
It's 2000, right in early 2000. Everybody said, I always gone hunting, and everybody said, you need to start a guide service. You need to start taking people. So I went down to, right out between Etterbean and Slaughter. There's a guy down there named Bo Prestige. Bo moved here from Arkansas. He was a rice farmer, and he was the first outfitter in Mississippi. You know, he was on all the outdoor shows and all that stuff, you know. And all the moss yoke was just getting started, Real Tree. They were all coming to hunt with Bo. And everybody said, yeah, you need to build a big, nice lodge, all these blinds and all that stuff. Bo had a system where he would go around to the different farmers, and they had duck holes fixed up. And he would pay them so much a gun to take a group in there hunting. So he had a good number of hunters that came. And I remember Bo telling me, he said, well, he put a lodge behind his house that slept about 15, 20 people. He said, the last thing you want to do is build something in your backyard that you got to tend to all year. And so my brother Stephen and I thought about it for a minute, and we said, well, we'll start it up. So he would guide, and a buddy John Meek, who just passed away about a month ago, had a car wreck. But John and Stephen would guide, and I would guide. And my wife would cook, and we had one house on the farm that we'd used. And I probably hunted 45 days a year, you know. And everybody said, you need to build these big, nice blinds and a big lodge. Everybody wants to be comfortable, come in, eat, and have drinks and stuff at night and go hunting. I said, no, I don't think so. I think everybody I ever hunted with wants to kill ducks. Right. And I said, we're going to do it my way. I said, so we, you know, pretty much when we had a group come, our only expenses were whatever the groceries cost, because my wife cooked, and I took people when we already owned the house, and then, so, you know, we made money from day one. And
right.
We didn't have any, we hadn't spent any money,
overhead, right.
no overhead. So anyway, we clicked along, you know. It was funny when I met my wife. It was like opening weekend of turkey season. We went out somewhere in March. She was a junior in high school, and I was a senior. And her daddy said, you want to go turkey hunting in the morning? Well, I didn't know what the hell turkey hunting was. He said, yeah, I'll go. She looked pretty good. And so anyway, so we'll be back up at 3:30 in the morning. Hell, I'd never been turkey hunting. So I get up and go home on the gravel road. Probably had a flat or two on the way home. We had 4 or 5 spares in the trunk. And didn't have but one car. And got my camouflage duck hunting stuff out and went back up there, because I knew if I went to sleep I wouldn't wake up. And got back up there and taps on the window at 3:30, and we go turkey hunting down around Malmason somewhere down Grenada County. And next morning my mama gets up, the car's gone, and I'm not there, and she said, where in the hell is Mike? Goes out with that damn girl one night, stays out all damn night. So he called my mom-in-law and said, Manny, where's Mike? Oh, he's gone turkey hunting with Jen. Gone where? Gone turkey hunting. So anyway, that got me hooked on turkey hunting. So I think this past year was the first year I hadn't killed a turkey in 50-something years, you know.
Really?
I killed a Grand Slam 7 times, the Royal Slam twice, and World Slam, you know, one in Mexico. World Slam, and then
I didn't know you got in the World Slam. I knew you'd done the Grand
I've got the
Slam.
Grand Slam, the Royal Slam, and the World Slam.
So what's a Royal Slam?
Royal Slam is all 4 species in the United States, and it's one in northern Mexico called a Gould.
Okay.
It looks kind of like a Merriam.
Mm-hmm.
The World Slam, you got to go to Campeche in southern Mexico on the Yucatan Peninsula and kill them. It looks kind of like a peacock. Real pretty, colorful bird. But yeah, it's an addiction I kind of started. The old Dr. Ronald Robinson got him hooked on it too.
Yeah.
And that's another story.
He's got it pretty bad.
But anyway, we started guiding, and then people would come from all over, you know. We were probably doing up to about 300 hunts a year, and it was right early November. My wife fell. My daughter had just finished high school, and she was a freshman over here at Ole Miss. My son, Alvin, middle son, youngest son, had just gotten married, and they were living in Webb in my mother-in-law's house. And anyway, mother-in-law was living with us, and then I think Bolton was living in Jackson or something.
Yeah.
But she fell, hit her head, and passed away that next night. And so we was sitting there, you know, all of us wondering, you know, gotten kind of used to my hunting business for a wintertime income. But
Right.
So I remember Alvin and Emily moved in with me. Clancy was there for holidays or something, and Hetty would do all the cooking, and they didn't know how to cook. Clancy played basketball all her days, and we had a cook there, and then Hetty would cook, and then Emily's mom died when she was in the 10th grade. When they moved in with me, she had a box of macaroni and cheese and another box of Sam's hot dogs in there.
Lord.
And Alvin said, well, Daddy, Emily can't cook. Her daddy raised her on hot dogs and macaroni and cheese.
Yeah.
So anyway, we was sitting there, and I'd interviewed all kind of people to cook for me. And I looked at the girls, and I said, I've got a job for y'all. I said, what? I said, y'all going to cook for my duck hunters. And it was Daddy, Mr. Mike in the same breath. We can't cook. And then I told them what I was going to pay them. You know, going to pay them so much a person. Everybody walking in, ate breakfast. I'm going to pay that, and I'm going to pay all your expenses. Mm-hmm. And they looked at each other and said, we can do it.
Yeah, we can cook. We just figured out how to cook.
But it's funny how money motivates people.
Right.
Yeah, so anyway, that was my thing then. And then I started kind of hiring guides, my nephews, and then some of the college buddies and stuff. And then businesses started growing. And I remember it was 2008 or 9. They had that big market crash. You know, a lot of the builders and stuff went broke. A lot of the banks kind of went down. Prices went to nothing. But I lost a lot of my bankers, my construction people, my housing, all that people. But I didn't really have to advertise any. This was 2008 or 9. So I said, maybe I need to redo my website and put it on Google AdWords. Mm-hmm. And so I got this boy to redo my website and finished high school with me. Got it on right before Thanksgiving. Google AdWords back then, I was the first person to ever do that. You pay so much a click, put the keywords out there, and people click in like outfitters in Mississippi, duck hunting guides, goose hunt, deer hunt, Mississippi, whatever. They hit on that and then popped my name up and they called just like that. I remember that December. I'd done about 600 hunts the year before. I did like 300 a year, 300 hunts a year when Hetty died and 05. And I went from like 300 to 450 to 550 to 700, something like that. And I remember it was December and everybody had just gone broke. I didn't have anybody, had nothing on the books. And about the end of Thanksgiving, up into December, we got my website online. And I started getting calls from women all over. Said, my husband loves to go duck hunting, but we don't have the money to do it. He said, can I buy him a book of duck hunt for him for Christmas? I said, yeah. You take a credit card over the phone? Oh, yeah. The first thing I bought was a credit card. It just started clicking like that. Bam, 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 bam. So we did maybe 100 hunts and from Thanksgiving through the 1st of January, and in 25 days in January, we did about 700 hunts.
Good gracious.
So I said, maybe I need to start advertising. So that's when I started doing shows. I went to the outdoor shows, met all the outdoor people.
Yeah.
They went to Nashville, to NWTF show, Charlottesville, Virginia, Baton Rouge, Dallas, down in Florida, Tampa. I've been all over the country to shows and stuff. And then that got me to knowing all the TV people, and they started coming in. I don't know how many TV shows I've done. And now, you do, we've had several shows on YouTube here. I've got every show you see on TV, I've done a waterfowl show. But business, it just took off. It just boom, 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 boom. I remember Mississippi had the show called Mississippi Outdoors, and they were promoting. They have the wildlife. They had the wildlife board, and they had the wildlife foundation, and they had a tourism budget. So they said, "Well, we need a show that promotes tourism in the state." So they started this True South experience, Mississippi Outdoors, and it was on DirecTV. They had a free outdoor channel. They had Pursuit Network, and they had the outdoor channel. Of course, outdoor channel you had to buy a subscription for to watch it. Pursuit channel was a free outdoor channel on DirecTV. This is 2010 or something like that, and Mississippi Outdoors started doing. I was the only outfitter around, so I don't know how many times they would show that. So it would be on prime time DirecTV every month or every other month. I had a show or two on that they done. They do duck hunting shows, deer hunting shows, goose hunting shows, whatever. My phone started ringing. I mean, all over the world, people started coming to Tallahatchie County. Very few people in Mississippi even knew what I did.
Yeah.
But it was all, they would be watching DirecTV and see it, and it had the number up there, and it was crazy. It was my business just mushroomed then, and then I kept raising my prices and cutting my numbers down. I limit it now the number of people that I have. But so this will be 20. If I can make it this year, this will be 24 years I've been doing it. Long time.
It's a quarter of a century.
That's a long time. I said I'm the old guy now.
A lot of ducks.
Yeah.
Well, I know I'd been taking people bird hunting for a couple of years, and then one time Bolton was down for the visiting, or maybe he'd moved down for a little bit. It was around 12 or 13, and we were just hanging out talking one day, and I said, "Hey, you want to go bird hunting tomorrow?" He said, "Yeah, you want to go duck hunting tomorrow?" I said, "Yeah." And so we got up, and he took me duck hunting that morning, and then we went over on our place and shot some quail. Yeah. And we got through, and I got a picture of him somewhere holding up a half dozen quail and grinning ear to ear. And before we left, he said, "Hey, if we wanted to send some people to you, would you want to do that?" And I said, "Well, yeah, we could do that." He said, "Well, let me talk to Daddy, and we'll get something worked out." And I remember I was picking cotton, and y'all called me, and we worked it out over the phone.
That's been over 10 years now.
It's been I think 11.
Yeah.
And been taking people duck hunting in the morning and quail hunting in the afternoon ever since.
Yeah. But it's a the thing I like about it is I enjoy the people more than anything. I don't hunt. After Hetty died, I quit hunting, and all I do is the scouting and tended to it.
Well, I know, mainly through y'all, but now, we have a pretty big customer base of our own, but starting out, especially with y'all, I'd meet people from so many different places.
Everywhere.
I mean, they would come from all over the world.
Normally, we'd have about 32 to 35 states come in. Like I say, very few from Mississippi, none from Arkansas. We've started picking up a lot of the western states now, but mainly everything south and east and north of us would come in. They used to all go to Arkansas and stuff, but I kind of had a lot of my guides were, Ole Miss students.
Right.
They came over, and then I've got some local guides now, but I still use the Ole Miss and State guides as the base. You have to be careful mixing them. They don't just like you have them state guy marries an Ole Miss girl or something, and come from a mixed family, But you had to be careful with them because they get,
Well, they get out there at the guide lodge, and the Egg Bowl falls right there at the beginning of duck seasons.
Yeah, and there's a lot of competition between them, but they're all really great guides. The worst time in a guide's life is when he's fixing to graduate from college and he realizes that he's got to go get a real job and he can't guide anymore. So some of them will go to college another year or two or whatever just so they can guide, and nearly all of them, without any exception at all, they're going to always go that last fall semester and not start work till spring, so they can hunt those years. So we'd hunt 52, 55 days out of a 60-day season.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them. But I always think I won't have any guides, but I mean they kill each other to get a job guiding and stuff. I hope I don't run out. I hope I don't run out before I run out.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. But,
let's talk about Albin a little bit. What's he? You said he's got some property up there around Brazil still. Is he hunting it?
He does. He ended up with some of my father-in-law, mother-in-law's land out there, and it was funny. He had a field out there that he wanted to put in WRP, and my mother-in-law my daddy-in-law died in '94, my dad died in '95, and then my mother-in-law had a stroke, maybe '98 or something. My wife and I just fixed the house up, so she moved in with us and lived with us till 2005. She didn't have a mind when my wife died, but she lived with us for 7 or 8 years. We had to have somebody with her all the time. Mm-hmm. And then she moved in with her son and his wife, and I think she lived another 10 or 12 years after that. So my kids inherited their property out there, and I remember Albin was going to take that one field and turn it into put it in WRP. I said, no, you're not either. I said, why? I said, that's one of the best duck holes in the whole country. I said, you're going to take that thing and you're going to landform it, and you're going to put a rice field out there. You can put your pit line in that rice field. But that's what I call, back in the old days, a 3-man 100-duck hole. Mm-hmm. What's a 3-man 100-duck hole? Well, 3 of us could go hunting, and the ducks never quit flying, and in about 2 to 3 hours, we could kill 100 ducks if we wanted to. I mean, it's right between a couple of places out there. So I remember he got it. They got the land. They got in there and they leveled it. And then they didn't finish that place until it was 4th of July. So he said, what are we going to plant this like? Plant rice on it. So I remember we got it planted in rice and we had to water it up, And it took the ducks till, when you get out there and you have those old duck holes, they got to have duck history.
Right.
The ducks have to be used to coming back to an area. So once you get it fixed up, they'll eventually get in there, but it might take them a few years, a while before they start using an area again after it's changed from what it was. People don't think I know what the hell I'm talking about, but I know what the hell I'm talking about. Bubba Graham used to always say that place doesn't have any duck history. So you've got a lot of places that I call them no duck holes. Ducks have never been there, won't ever be there, but you got to have duck history to the place. The Albin's place had duck history, but they started killing ducks in there, and he had never looked back on it.
Yeah.
He fixed it and got him a pit line out in there, and it's something to see. It's really, I go over there in the afternoons and just sit up on the road and just watch the ducks and geese and come in there. And
I know a few years back, some friends of mine and I were having supper down at Three-Way Restaurant outside of Charleston, and Bolton was going to come meet us, and he got there. He was a little bit later, and my friends were all, none of them were interested in duck hunt when I was in college. And when I was in college, we were still in the lease at York Woods.
Yeah.
And I couldn't pay anybody to come duck hunting with me.
Yeah.
You know, after we got out of college, and then James Kennedy had bought it all up, and couldn't go somewhere like that anymore. Then all my friends got into duck hunting.
Yeah.
And but they were talking about how you get ducks to come in. They were talking about decoy spreads and duck calling, and was the Polaris flaring the ducks off or this or that, and that they were debating it all. And I was listening to them, and Bolton got there, and he sat down, and we were talking, and they were continuing on their conversation. And I don't think they knew Bolton. They knew who y'all were, but they had never met Bolton. And so I introduced him after a minute, and he had heard all the stuff they were saying. And one of the guys turned and looked at him. He said, "Well, you're probably an expert on this. What do you think? In this situation, what's the best way to get ducks to come in?" Mm-hmm. And Bolton said, "To be where they want to come."
It's the secret to killing ducks is hunting where the ducks are.
Yeah, he said if ducks aren't going to come there anyway, there's nothing you're going to do that's going to make them.
And no duck history.
Yeah, no duck history.
Yeah.
You were telling that, and I thought that sounds exactly like what Bolton told us.
Yeah, he's heard it. I preach it, and I get told. I don't tell you how much I get told. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I know. But I give you one example of a place that we had. We had the 14-minute hole, we called it. Over there was a little field and a little lake over there, and I had some guys up from New Orleans. Well, actually, they were out in a little break, a little gadwall hole, and had some guys come over from Dallas. They used to own a place called Greenbrier in Stuttgart, Stevens Group, really, really famous duck area there. And this guy and his brother and his dad owned it, and they'd sold it. And the man's daughter was a sorority sister, pledge sister of my daughter's at Ole Miss, and his godson was another boy who kept coming over, worrying me till I leased him a duck hole to hunt on. And it was a funny story on this guy. He went to Highland Park High School in Dallas, and he's going to be a senior, and they'd won a state championship the year before. And his 10th grader, he was going to be starting quarterback, and his 10th grader kid came up and beat him out. He sat on the bench his whole senior year. The 10th grader was Matthew Stafford. Went to Georgia and won the Super Bowl last year. And then same way with baseball. He's a pitcher on the baseball team. They won a state championship his junior year. And so he's going to be the best pitcher his senior year. Comes up, 10th grader comes, beats him out. And so he's just out of the bullpen whenever they needed him when he was a senior. Well, that was Clayton Kershaw.
Good gracious.
So anyway, he came over, and he loved to duck hunt. But I got a check from a guy in Dallas, and I didn't know who the hell it was. But I gave him a little hole. They were coming over from Oxford, 2 or 3 of them from Ole Miss every morning. And it took me, from my house, it wasn't 10 minutes to get there, but it took an hour and a half to go get set up out there. Mm-hmm. They were over here every day. And finally I said, "But y'all boys can't be driving over here." So I fixed up the back. I was living in the house by myself. And I gave them a little back room and put some bunk beds in there. And that's where they stayed, and they ended up staying over there. Well, that's when my business kind of took off. So they all call themselves the OGs now, the original guides. They got married and kids and stuff. But I remember the guy that sent the check. He was the one that owned Greenbrier. He came over and got my nephew Duval and Alvin, some of them, to take them out into this hole out in this break. And they had the mojos out there. 7 of them, I think. It took them 14 minutes to kill 7 limits.
Good.
So we call that the 14-minute hole. And then we go another hole that was right down from that, snow hole. The way it got its name is it had snowed. This would have been in the spring of 2000, and all the kids were home from college and high school, and the schools were out. And I'd been watching these ducks go in over there. It's right down from a 14-minute hole. And they wanted to go, so we piled in there at about 3:30 or 4, and the ducks just boiled out there, all mallards, you know. So I stood out on the snow outside the hole with my buddy and his buddy and another guy, and all the Alvin and Bolton and all them just kind of surrounded the hole like if the ducks got out, and they started coming right back in there. They started shooting, and I was just counting. 1, 2, 7, 15, 20, 28, 30, 34, 35. We killed 48 ducks. 40, 41, 42, 40, 55, 50, 56. Stop it! You can't shoot anymore. We can shoot a few more. No, you can't shoot anymore. And it took about 12, 15 minutes. It didn't take any time. But we were just sitting out on the bank, and I was counting, and my buddies were just shooting the cripples when they'd come out of the hole. And then when we got through, I think we'd killed 52 mallards, you know, picked up, limit was 48. I said, we got to go. And the whole snow was just covered in blood like that. So my buddy that was sitting there, he looked at me after we got through. He said, you know, that's the best duck hunt I've ever been on in my life. And I looked back at him. I said, that's the best duck hunt I've ever been on in my life. And I've been on a bunch of them. So anyway, that guy got colon cancer, and that was his last year to come. He died that next year, so that was his last hunt. So I named that hunt duck hole after him, Billy Slade's Snow Hole.
Yeah.
He had a towboat company in New Orleans. But anyway, back to the 14-minute hole. That guy that had Greenbrier had quit hunting, and you know he comes back and this lit a fire under him. He had more money, knew what to do.
Yeah.
And so he started looking for property over here, and I found him, you know, different places to buy, but he had to have his own place and fix it up. So he bought a place on the west side of Parchman over there.
Oh, okay.
And hired a guy that got the waterfowl. It was waterfowl. Remember the waterfowl chair I told you at Mississippi State? Well, he was the graduate of that. Hired him for his biologist, and this other guy down in Lake Washington, Greenville. He's kind of like me. Hank Burdine married his daughter, and anyway, they work over there, and he fixed those holes up over there. Had a lot of WRP, CRP land, planted them in rice, you know, water seeding the rice. But he didn't have it. The place didn't have any duck history on it. Didn't kill anything. But now the ducks have gotten in there, and they just have fabulous hunts in there all the time now. But he gives me credit for lighting the fire under him and getting them. But all of Tallahatchie County now is a hotbed for people that want hunting area now. You know, all of this area, that's the whole nother story. But it goes back to, you know, when all the guys were farming and clearing up land out there, and they had, Jamie Whitten was chairman of the House Appropriations Committee.
Right.
Well, he was from, he said he's born in Casilla, but he lived in Charleston. And a lot of guys that farmed in that area, they would go borrow their money from FHA, Farmers Home Administration. And they had them. It would have been 60s, 70s, early 80s and stuff. They cleared up all that land, farming all marginal land in the county. And I remember being on the FHA board and people coming there where they'd get the crop loans there. And then some of them would be struggling or stumping, and Jamie would put something on the bill where if they could show positive cash flow on this year's furnace, they could get a furnace for this year, and they would set all the other debts aside. So finally they go in there, and the back debts had just been building up. Some of them owed thousands of dollars an acre, but they were still able to get a furnace from the FHA. And then they went in there and said, okay, we're going to have to show some progress on the back debt before we give you a furnace. And they couldn't get any loans. So Jamie put a thing on attached something onto a bill. I call it the Tallahatchie County bill. But it had a write-down buyback thing in it. And this is true. This ain't made up stuff, but this is true. But anyway, so what they did...
When you say write-down buyback, what do you mean?
That's what I'm fixing to tell you. They took that value, the debt that they had, and took the value of the assets of real estate, and they wrote that debt down to what they called a net recovery value, which might be, you might owe $2,000, $1,500, $2,000 an acre on land. Wrote it down to $150, $200 an acre. If you couldn't afford to pay it, might be. I know some people that got theirs back for zero, nothing. And so instead of and the other part was just written off, and they got it furnished and they kept on. Well, that infuriated Congress, people in Congress.
So it just forgave the debt.
Huh?
It essentially forgave the debt.
Forgave the debt, yeah. And it was basically for Jamie Whitten's
Farmers
constituents. Right? He wrote the thing. And I will not say that, but anyway, that's what it was. And anyway, he had it infuriated a lot of the members of Congress. So what they did, they went in there and EPA came in and said that the entire Mississippi Delta is classified as a wetland. So that meant that you could do the right down buyback on the thing, but if all of the delta is a wetland, you can't ever farm it again. So lots of people said, we don't want the land if we can't farm it. So they turned it over to FHA. And then so in our area, it's just thousands and thousands of acres that catfish ponds, farming land, whatever, that FHA's got in the inventory. And they didn't want the land. What the hell could they do with land? Mm-hmm. Some of it they sold. They had them, young farming thing, some of it minority thing. They sold a little bit of it out like that. But they had so much land, they said, what can we do with it? So somebody said, well, let's turn it over to U.S. Fish and Wildlife and start the Tallahatchie National Wildlife Refuge. So that was the seed acreage for Tallahatchie National Wildlife Refuge. So all of those fields out there that had been cleared and farmed and flooded that we hunted for years, they just turned over to Fish and Wildlife and they start growing back up in trees. And then it grows up and grows up. And that's been back in the 80s and early 90s. That's 30, 40 years now.
Those are forests now.
So anyway, what's that do? Deer population of the county.
Yeah.
It's just, we've got, if you look at the records down on state records on deer, it's Tallahatchie County deer. And then it's not so much Tallahatchie. It's all up and down through the Delta,
right.
With all this land. If you make a ride through Quitman County, and you'll see how many, just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres that, been going back up in trees. But then CRP, WRP program on top of that. But and then you got that Tallahatchie National Wildlife Refuge is huge. Mm-hmm. But they didn't allow any hunting on it. They had a little bit of hunting here and there now. But that all started, with Jamie Whitten's right down buyback deal and that land going over to FHA. But some of the guys held out long enough where they didn't lose the land; they kept the land, and then they got to where they could farm parts of it, and then. Like I said, it wasn't any hunting. It's like when you're saying, wasn't any hunting going on, and all of a sudden the hunting going on now. So that land just as valuable as any other land. I tell everybody you've got an agricultural value in our county, and you've got a recreational value on land in our county. Yeah.
And traditionally, the last 20 years, they haven't been that far apart.
Well, there wasn't anything when I started my hunting.
Yeah.
But now it's huge.
Right.
And like these guys are saying, trying to figure out how to keep ducks out there. But when these ducks, I call that the Brazil flyway, out there where all the water comes together and floods everything. It still floods every year. And we had, it's something to see. Albin's place out there is just really something to see. And then York Woods, Jim Kennedy's guy, he came in and bought that place. I know my buddy in Charleston thought he had it put together. And then Jim found out about it. And Jim's one of the wealthiest people in the United States, but he's a really good person. And he just look what all he's done to Charleston, to the
he built the wellness center.
Millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Put in there. But, and the duck hunters have too. They bought stuff from everywhere.
And they come in and they're eating places and they're buying groceries and it's a B-12 shot in the arm of the economy for sure every winter.
There's nothing else going on that town.
No, there's no other tourism.
Yeah, but it's always a struggle, Always a struggle to get it done. Everybody wants something for nothing and doing whatever, and they want to be, I got this good hunting place and whatever. But it's just a business. It's just, but it's a really fun thing to do. So I hope when I'm gone, somebody will keep doing it, because yours is fun too. Your dad really, he enjoys.
Yeah.
You know, your dad, you take them, they'll tip. They wouldn't tip you, but they tip your dad.
Oh, he thinks that's hilarious. Yeah. Well, son, you own the business. I said, well, I'm also guiding. I said, I don't care if they don't tip me, but the fact that they're tipping you so much is what I don't understand. He said, well, I just get them out there and I regale them with stories from back in the day, and they seem to enjoy that. And I thought, well,
he's full. He's got stories like I do.
yeah.
He really does. One of my favorite stories on your dad, we ought to put this on tape, but he was on, I'm not going to mention names, he was on school board with me, and there was this lady in there, and she was a firecracker. I mean, she wanted things done. They all had to be done her way, and they all had to be done right now.
Mm-hmm.
And your dad wasn't like it, you know.
No.
So she was sitting there pounding on the desk one day, and when we were in a board meeting and telling us all what she was going to do, and telling your daddy what he was going to do, and he was just shaking his hand and wasn't going to vote with her any kind of way. And she beat on that table, beat on that table, beat on that table. She said, I tell you one damn thing, Bud Trout, if you were my husband, you wouldn't be. And he stood up and said, time out, time out, time out. What do you mean, time out? That's one thing that's not going to happen. What? I won't ever in the history of the whole world ever be your husband. That woman got so mad, she went up and she slammed that door, and pictures fell off the wall, and all the rest of us on the board, we got up and gave him a standing ovation. He was something. Bud. Almighty Bud.
Man, we went into York Woods one time, and we were gonna go back, take some boats back in that timber, and there was a little hole back in there. Like if you just pass through it, you wouldn't think, well, there's a duck hole, but there was a little open spot in that timber back there, and it's just one of those spots they have to be. Yeah. And it was, so I was probably 14, 15 maybe, and then it was Christopher and Michael Robertson were there, with Ronald was there, my brother Daniel was there, and Brian Robertson was there, and we were in boats, and we got in there and got like pulled into some kind of brush top around the side of there, the side of that hole, and Daddy's on one side with Brian Robertson, and I think maybe I was in the boat with him, I can't remember, and then Ronald had a big boat and we were over here on that side, and we were ready and had everything set up and kind of waiting on shooting light and waiting on the ducks. And for some reason, Daddy was getting his stuff ready. It was about 20 degrees. It was freezing. That we had to break ice going in, and Daddy he was getting his stuff ready, and he had a Browning 12 gauge, and he picked it up and he had it sitting up, but I guess the point of the barrel was like out of the boat a little bit, and for some reason, Mr. Bryan decided to move the boat, but he didn't tell Daddy. He just hit the motor. And when he did, one of those brush tops grabbed Daddy's shotgun and pulled it out in the water.
Oh, gosh.
And he said, I turned, the boat's headed this way, and I looked down, and he said, and I can see the gun flipped. He said, I had loaded it because we were fixing to get ready to shoot. He said, and I looked down, and he said, it's going barrel pointing up, just dropping straight down. He said, and then he said, Brian pulled out, looped around, and came right back where we were.
He did.
He said, and I looked at him, I said, did you just not want me to have my gun? Like, what are we doing? And he said, I'm sorry. Well, I think either Brian or Ronald one had an extra gun with them, so they let him borrow it. And it was one of those hunts. There were so many mallards up above us circling. I mean, the sky was just black with them. Yeah. And I think, to my memory, that was the first time I'd been up under like a cyclone of ducks that size. And, kids, teenagers are prone to just shooting, So everybody's telling us, don't shoot. And I remember everybody sitting there with their head down, and you're looking up, and I'm just thinking, when are we going to shoot? Because it was thousands of ducks coming down, and I remember like getting real antsy and thinking, I'm just going to shoot. And then I remember Daddy saying, don't shoot. And I looked at him and I said, and he goes, wait for them to land. And I was like, you're not going to shoot them in the water. You know, I've been taught that much. You're not going to do that. He said, wait till they land and shoot the last one. And I was like, what? But that's what he was telling me. When you got that many, let them land and then shoot the last ones that are light.
And then you shoot
the other ones when they come off the water, because it's a lot easier shot. We limited out of that. It's like you're talking about that 14 minutes. I mean, it took no time, and we killed limits for everybody. And then we all left. And Daddy stripped down and went in the water in that freezing cold water. And
cold enough to freeze the nuts off.
Well, I like to hear Brian Robertson tell the story, because he was the only one out there with him. And he said Daddy got over in that water, and he said he was holding on the side of the boat and had his chin above
How
the
deep
boat.
was it?
It was deep. He said he had his chin above the boat, and he was holding on to the side, and he was just going. But Daddy, he said he felt around, and he felt the gun.
Yeah.
It was hung up on some brush down there, and he said he put it between his feet and brought it up, and he said all I could think was it's going to hit something and go off.
Yeah.
But he said he was able to get it up to where he could reach down with one arm and get it, and he got that gun back. But that I think was probably the fastest limit of ducks I've ever been a part of. It happened so fast; it was unbelievable.
Yeah, those are some good ones. You don't forget those. You get a spot named after you on something like that. Yeah.
Well, that's about all I got. You got anything else you want to talk about?
No, we're supposed to be in Alaska right now.
We're supposed to be in Alaska.
I'll tell this story. I usually go. I've been going probably for the last 15 years. And I go up for the sockeye run, and on Kenai River, and I've been looking at them. The thing about salmon, they come to they spawn. They go down the river and they go out in the Gulf of Alaska, go out Cook's Inlet, wherever they go, but they come back to the very spot where they're born several years later. And then they do that process again. You get females come up the river with all the eggs, and the males follow them up, and they lose their color. They get from silver to red, and they, fertilize the eggs. They go back to the very spot where they're born. How they do that, I don't know. And they hatch out, and the adult fish die, come floating down the river. Well, like I said, I'm not up there this year, and I want to go any day, but I just can't go right now. What I got going on. But I took you guys up there several years ago, and we got in there on a Sunday afternoon. We go out on this old public pier right there on the Kenai, and we're catching fish. So your dad and I, it was 4 of us, wasn't it?
It's 4 of us.
4 of us that day. So we thought we could catch 24 fish. So we go out there.
Well, my brother looked it up on his phone, and it said Kenai River.
The limit was 6.
6 fish apiece. Yeah.
So anyway, we go and catch some fish, and your dad and I said, well, let's go check in the hotel, and that way we'll come back and get y'all later. And so we come back, and then, long story short,
I'll tell you, while y'all were gone, Daniel and I, we were going to catch, we had a limit apiece left to catch.
Yeah.
And we got to the 11th fish, and we were swapping off. I'd net, and he would cast, and then I would cast, and he would net. And he'd caught the 11th one. And so I'm out there in the river. There's 100 people out there up and down there. They call it combat fishing.
That's right.
And I heard, like, over the roar of the river and the wind of it, I heard, hey. And I turned around and I said, what? He said, what's the limit? And I said, well, you looked it up. You said it was 6. He said, but is it? I said, well, you've got your phone. I said, look it up. And so I sat there in a minute and waited on him, and he looked it up, and he said, oh, it's 6. It is. I said, okay. And so we caught another fish and went up there in front of God and all of Alaska and took pictures with them and cleaned them and
fillet and release.
Filleted them, and they did it. Yeah. People walk by and look at us, and I asked them, we were up there cleaning fish. I said, why'd you get nervous we got one fish left to catch. Why are all of a sudden you nervous? He said, I don't know. I just kept seeing people walk. I saw 2 or 3 people walk by me, and they were leaving without their limit. And I said, well, dang 'em, not everybody's as good at this as we are.
Yeah.
We had just gotten there that day.
Yeah. Then the next day we'd go fishing with a guide. My daughter had flown in that night. There were 5 of us in. 4 of us in.
No, it's 5. Yeah,
5 of us in. And so we think we can catch 30 fish. And we get out there at 12 or 13. The guy said, well, we got 2 or 3 more. And said, the guy tells Kyle, or then he said, yeah, the limit's 3. I said, oh my gosh. I mean, we could be on the front page of the Alaska paper, over the limit fish. Well, somehow it wasn't time for us to get locked up, so the good Lord said, y'all can go on and fish another day. But yeah, that's always a fun trip and stuff up there.
Man, every now and then we'll be sitting there not talking about anything, and Daddy will look at me and he'll say, can you imagine what would have happened if we had gotten caught? We didn't even know that we were doing anything wrong, and all of a sudden we're all in trouble up in Alaska. Can you imagine? I was like, no, I cannot, actually.
Yeah. You wouldn't, it's only illegal if you get caught, I guess.
To take it back to the beginning, it's...
Yeah. Oh, Lord. But anyway, everybody says, well, duck hunting's just not what it used to be. It's not the numbers and stuff. I said, the ducks are still here. Mm-hmm. When they come down the Mississippi Flyway, they come to our area, and I think what's changed more than anything is on your agricultural stuff. You have your soybeans and stuff with your dicamba and stuff that they put out, and the chemicals and stuff. It's not even any grass left out there for them to eat on. And then everybody goes in there and they want to work their fields up in the fall, and so they can be ready to plant in the spring. But hell, it doesn't make a hill of beans.
So the face of the landscape has changed.
It's a feed situation. When those ducks get down here, they come all the way from Canada. You start shooting them up there in August and September, and by the time they get down here, this is as far as they go. And they want food. They're hungry. Mm-hmm. It's colder, and they need protein. They need food to survive the winter before they head back north. So if I had to say anything to anybody, if you get an area and it's got ducks on it, you flood it, have you some feed out there. I don't care if it's grass in the bottom of a field or you leave some soybeans or corn. If you got a place leased, pay the farmer something to leave something out there. And if he doesn't do it, just don't leave it in your lease that you've got some feed out there, and you got to pay him for it because grain prices are high. Either go in there and plant something, plant millet, plant milo, plant whatever you can, and where you've got feed, the ducks will eventually find it, and then they will come back. That old adage you hear about people flying in rice or corn after the season so the ducks will come back. That's true. Yeah, they do that, and they do that a lot over in Arkansas and stuff, and some people around home do it. But,
I had a friend the other day.
They got to have feed.
Right. I had a friend the other day tell me he farms in Bolivar County, and he said that he has some people from Alabama come over, South Alabama, like all the way around Mobile, and they wanted to rent a duck hole from him. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, I got 2. I keep one of them for myself. I'll rent you the other one. Yeah. And he said, it's a duck hole, he said, but it's a flooded end of a bean field. It backs up to some trees and a slough. And he said, it's a pretty good duck hole, but you got to have food out there for them. Yeah. He said, and the guy was asking me, he said, well, you going to leave us some soybeans? Mm-hmm. I said, I'll leave you all the soybeans you want. They're $14 a bushel, and we'll take the average of whatever we cut, and we'll do it that way. I'll leave you whatever you want, but it's going to be $14 a bushel. Yeah. He said, now that guy drove all the way up here wanting a duck hole, and looked at it, and he left without making a deal, and then called me on the road and said they had decided not to do it. He said, and I think it's because I was going to charge him for the soybeans. Yeah. He said, but if I had taken his money and not left any soybeans, they weren't ever going to come in there.
But if I had to tell anybody anything, you think about what I said about the hiding behind the high spot in the field. When you go out there and you see all these big blinds out there. Look like a damn tree house out there in the middle of a duck hole. Ducks, might kill some shoalers or something, but you're not going to fool the ducks. If you got a tree line out there, add to your tree line. If you got trees along the edge of a ditch, do it. But and then the next most important thing is feed. But once you see them in there one year, they'll be back in there the next year, and the year after, and the year after. And just, he said, is such thing as having too many duck holes? I don't think so. Yeah. I can't count the number of places I've hunted just on my farm and all the land around. I can ride for days and say we hunted and killed them here. And you never know. With Tallahatchie County, you've got backwater, floodwater on lots of years. What's it looking like this year? I don't know. Arca Butler's drains, Enid's slap full. It's a little bit, and Sardis is fairly full, but they're draining it down. So it'll depend on your fall rains, But all of my duck holes that I have, that I've designed, is I make it look like we're flooded with backwater, whether we have backwater or not. Yeah. And then, and a lot of people have bought land out in that Brazil bottom out there. I remember Billy DeVinny and Eddie Briggs came down. Eddie was lieutenant governor one time, and they had bought some land. The guy, Mr. Kennedy, wanted all the land on the north side of York where the gravel road was. He wanted anybody shooting around him, so he couldn't get the people on the west side of the river to sell land to him. So he got a realtor from Jackson to come in and buy nearly everything over there. And what he did, he took the people that owned land that joined him that he wanted him, he offered them 2 acres for every one for the acres that he land across the river, and then they ended up selling it all to him. And he put a big levee around there that was 4 feet high on the 73 flood mark around the north side of York, and that kind of changed the direction of the Tallahatchie right in there. Illegal to hell to do it, but Jim had so damn much money he could pay off wherever he had to. Yeah. But anyway, that whole area on the west side got bought up by people, and some of it was planted in CRP, WRP, and then I remember when Eddie and Eddie Briggs and Billy DeVinny came. Billy was on Wildlife Foundation forever, and then Eddie was lieutenant governor back then. They didn't have any ducks. So he came hunted with me, and then they rode out there and showed me the place. And I said, what can we do to have ducks on them? I said, I took them down to the low end that floods. I said, put your levee on this end and a line of trees and just levee it up. Put your well up on the gravel road and put your, other smaller levees in here and have it where it looks like backwater. And they did that, and they have a lot of ducks out there.
Really?
But that's what I was telling you. Over there where the snow hole and 14-minute hole was, we didn't have any ducks over there. One year that lake dried up. They had a wooden bridge in there that the beavers kept dammed up, so we kept water in there year round. And then the county came in and put a big tanker car in there to drain it. So the thing kept sinking, and the water came through, and it dried the lake up. So it dried up like in summer, and it wasn't any water in there till December. So when all that first wave of ducks got down there, there wasn't any water in the lake, so they quit using it. Well, it's taken years to get those ducks back in there, but they finally got them back in there. I took the field by the snow hole and the 14-minute hole, and I leveled it. I left a tree line out in there, and I put rice on it. I've had it 6 or 7 years now, but I've done several TV shows last year. It's on that place, but the ducks found it. The Duck History came back to it, and they got back in there. Yeah. But I think we hunted it last year, not the last 9 days of the season, with however many people we had limited. It didn't matter what time of day we went in there.
Really?
But it was fabulous. Yeah. But it's just got to know what you're doing.
That's right.
Enjoy it.
Well, thank you, and I want to tell you thank you because you've been a good mentor to me as I built this guide business up, and I think we've done a lot of good business together. But I've learned a lot from you.
Well, I just hope my health lets me keep doing it. I don't know.
Yes.
Day by day right now.
Right.
And I'm hoping I get patched up where I'll be able to keep it. And if I can't do it, I hope somebody else will.
Yeah.
But it's too, it really helps our community. This, especially in the wintertime. And then these people, they come from all over the world. you know, country. I haven't had as many from outside the country since COVID hit, but before that I had 6 or 8 different countries, and then all over the United States come in here, and then it's something. You know, that's what I really enjoy.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Please like us, share us, subscribe to us. You can check us out wherever you like to get your podcast, or you can go straight to www.troutvalleyquail.com and click on the Standing Point tab to subscribe, and you'll get all of our content right into your inbox, totally free. If you would like to advertise with us or support us, please email me at cal@troutvalleyquail.com, and I will get the information to you. This episode is brought to you by OLR Realty in Oxford, Mississippi. You can go check them out at www.olragency.com, and buy a kind gift from Mr. Houston Stewart. Thank you.